So if you want to carry around some heavy electric bikes, you might have noticed that electric bikes seem to be getting heavier and heavier, which also makes it trickier and trickier to get them onto your rack and off of it. So we've noticed that different brands have different solutions to making this an easier process for you. A common solution is to add ramps. So we have 2 bike racks here that have ramps included with them. There's the Yakima OnRamp as well as the Hollywood Rack's Destination E bike rack. And they do a lot of things similarly. You have the same features, but they also do things differently, and we're going to explore those features. Hopefully this video will help you see, understand the different bike racks, understand ramps more, and then make the decision for what fits your lifestyle, your vehicle, and your bikes best. Both of the bike racks are designed for your heavy electric bikes, which means that they have some features in common. One of them is going to be that heavy e-bike weight capacity. The Yakima OnRamp has a 66 pound per bike weight capacity, while the Hollywood Rack's Destination E has a 70 pound per bike weight capacity. Both of them are frame mounted, which means they hold onto your bike by the frame, plus they both have straps for your wheels to add that extra support. They also have the ability to fold up and tilt away. But before we get into a deep dive on those features, let's talk about the most important thing they have in common, which is they have ramps. When carrying around electric bikes, there's 2 very important things you need to figure out first. The first is, how heavy is your bike? Get that weight, especially the weight when the battery is off, and then also figure out things like your tire size and wheelbase. You want the heaviest bike closest to the vehicle. And the second thing is back to that battery. If you do take that off, you can store it inside of your vehicle. That will also help preserve the battery's life, because then it doesn't have to go through that extra road vibrations and movement when it's on your bike rack. So with all that figured out, let's get it on. First off, the Yakima OnRamp. This has a 51-inch long ramp, and what sets this apart from the other rack is that this can go on both sides. So sometimes you don't get to choose where you park your vehicle, and maybe there's another vehicle really close on the other side. You can move this over to our driver's side, and it fits into the tray and comes down. Now with this being a 51-inch long ramp, that can also change your experience depending on your ground clearance of your vehicle's hitch receiver and where you are parked. Getting this onto the on-ramp, we have a narrow tire, honestly. It's 2.10 inches wide, but even then, it's a tight fit on our ramp. If I had maybe 3.25 inch wide tires, I just go on top of it. Being careful to make sure that it stays on track, front and rear wheel, and also that we're dodging the handlebars up front. There we go. And getting it into position. So that was a relatively smooth process. Let's take it over to the Destination and see the difference. The Destination E has a telescoping ramp that has a maximum length of 46 inches. So it is shorter than the Yakima OnRamp. Another main difference is that this can only go on one side, which is where the rear tire sits. So driver's side for this far cradle, passenger side for the close cradle. Now there is a workaround for that though, because no matter which side I put it on, I can still load 2 bikes on that way. For this ramp, the maximum tire width is going to be up to 4.5 inches wide. And already you can see the major difference with this getting loaded onto the ramp. So easy, not narrow at all. If I was loading the bike up onto the other side, I'd just do a quick hop over to the other cradle. Here we're just going to go straight through, dodging the handlebars much more easily this time, making sure we stay on track and getting it up and in. That worked out pretty well too. While both ramps were helpful for getting a heavy electric bike onto the rack because I didn't have to lift that heavy rear hub, there are some differences to them too. I personally like the Destination E ramp because it's wider and it feels sturdier. Now when you're done using the ramps, the Yakima OnRamp has its ramp stored on the bike rack with a knob, while the Destination E does not store on the rack. You have to fold it up and put it inside your vehicle. Both bike racks secure the bikes by the frame, and the Yakima OnRamp has a clamp that swivels out and rotates for your different frames. This also has a strap that goes around your bike's frame and secures with a ratcheting mechanism. This has a rubber piece that helps secure that frame but also helps prevent scuffs and scratches. This tray style helps out with getting your bikes ramped up onto the rack, but the trays can also move off center if you're having issues with bike-to-bike contact. So there's these knobs underneath that you can loosen, and then you can slide the tray one way to the other. You also have straps that pivot back and forth for those different wheelbases, one strap for each tire. And the maximum tire width for this is technically 3.25 inch wide tires, but you can get longer straps available here at etrailer for those wider tires. For the Destination E's frame mount, it is similar to a claw, and it goes around your frame and you turn a knob to secure the bike. So just keep rotating that knob until it's fully tightened down. Compared to the Yakima OnRamp's mast, this comes from the back and goes over your closer bike to secure the further bike. So for some people that might help out with contact, but for others, depending on those bike frames, it might make it a little trickier. While it clamps on the frame similarly to the OnRamp, this one has a lock core on the knob. The Destination E has an arched tray, which adds for an interesting look, but can also make it slightly easier to get your bike on there even without the ramp. This, instead of having 2 straps, has 3 straps, with the third strap being a front wheel chock. So your front wheel is secured down by an extra support point, which, when we'll take a look at that later in this video, helps a lot when it tilts away. This one has extra long straps plus a pad on the straps, which helps for those 4.5 inch wide tires. You also have a pull tab to make it easier to get that tight fit. So for how they secure the bikes, both racks actually rate equally for me. Because the Yakima OnRamp has its mast in the center, it's between the bikes, which means I don't have to figure out how it fits over the other bike to get it secured. You can adjust it up and down and around. While the Destination does have that hook that goes over, so that might be trickier for some bikes, but it also has a lock on the frame mount, so I don't have to deal with a cable lock and taking that off when I'm driving. So it really does depend on which one you prefer. Both bike racks have similarities where it matters. They can carry heavy electric bikes, they have that great weight capacity, they're frame mounted, and they have included ramps. But even within those similarities, there are slight differences. Now, some other features these have in common is tilt away and fold up capabilities, but that's where it gets really different. The way the Destination E tilts away is super unique. So this has a knob in the center of the rack towards the vehicle. If you rotate that knob, loosening it enough to push it out, you can then push out on the rack depending on the weight of your vehicle. So you may also want a second person on the other side. So you could either push it this way or pull it down this way, whichever is more comfortable for you. But once it comes down, it goes down almost 90 degrees. Well, this gives you a lot of clearance for opening up your hatch, opening up your trunk, or lowering your tailgate. You are still limited to the height of the mast on your shank. Lifting up involves lifting the weight of your bikes and then putting that weight either on the frame of the rack, which is preferred, or a little bit of weight on your bikes. Not as ideal, but sometimes necessary. And to secure it, again, is just a matter of flipping that knob right back in and tightening it down. So I like this design because then you're not at risk of having handlebars hit you as the bike rack tilts down, but it also might be a little too extreme for some applications with some extra heavy bikes. Tilting the Yakima OnRamp away is a little different. It involves 2 pins. The first one you just pop out. The second one involves squeezing the pin and pulling it out of its position. Once that pin is pinched and pulled, you can then lower this rack to a tilt. Having a second person for this one will also help out with making that a smoother and slower process. And while the tilt is not as deep as the Destination E, it's still pretty good to get that access to your hatch, your trunk, and lower your tailgate. Bringing the rack back up involves lifting on the bike rack. You are again supporting the full weight of your bikes, but once you're in position, that first pin snaps right back in, giving you time to go back in towards the shank and secure that other pin. Our next feature is going to be folding up the bike racks. Oh, this is heavy. And that's why the ramp is helpful. We're going to fold up the bike racks so we can show our racks in a compact or portable position, but you do have to take the bikes off first. So to get this down, you just pull that knob, bring it down, snaps into place. To fold the mast down on the Destination E involves 2 rubber straps, 2 levers, and then you can flip this mast down. But you do have to put the levers and the rubber straps back on. For the OnRamp, just like how you tilted it away, pull the 2 pins, but this time, instead of letting it drop down, you're gonna lift up where it snaps into place in the compact position. Don't forget to put that pin back in. For the Destination E, it involves a clip and a pin that you pull out. And once that's out, you can then lift up on the rack into the compact position. Now this does not snap into place, so you do have to line up the holes, but put that pin right back into the proper hole and you're secured. While both bike racks tilt away and fold up, you saw that they did it differently. The OnRamp was easier to fold up, while the Destination E, I preferred how it tilted away. But once they're in their folded position, you can see that the Destination E is a bigger rack. This weighs 46 pounds on its own, while the OnRamp weighs about 39.5 or 40 pounds as a rack. So if you're storing it in your garage or in your shed, or if you're installing it by yourself, that's something to consider. Now for the install process, that's another thing to talk about. The Yakima OnRamp is available with a 2-inch shank or an 1.25 inch shank, no adapter. So make sure to get the correct one for your hitch receiver size. It secures into the hitch receiver with an anti-rattle bolt that uses a 15/16 wrench. There is a stamp wrench included with your bike rack, but I prefer to get a separate tool because it's so much easier to tighten down the bike rack that way. To secure on the other end, you can either use a clip or your cable lock. The Destination E only has a 2-inch shank that fits into your 2-inch hitch receivers. This does not require any tools to install. Rather, it uses a hitch pin and a lock on the other end. That lock is key-like to the locks that you found on your frame mounts. The way this does the anti-rattle, though, is with this lever over here. You tighten down this lever, or I guess you could say it's a knob, and this pulls on that pin, taking away that shake and rattle. When I was installing the bike racks, I actually found the OnRamp easier to install because it wasn't as bulkily shaped, plus it was a little bit lighter than the Destination E. But when I was installing it, I did have to look back and forth into the hitch pin hole and put the bolt through and then use a tool to tighten it down. So you do see how it balances out with the Destination E in comparison. It does depend on your vehicle, your hitch receiver, as well as how much you want to carry. And hopefully you could also double check to see what your shank size is. If you have an 1.25 inch hitch receiver, the OnRamp really would be your only option. And if you have an RV or a motorhome, the OnRamp would be the choice for you. Now be careful though, because when it's on that hitch receiver, you do have a weight capacity of 40 pounds per bike versus the 66 pounds per bike you had on a car or SUV. The Destination E can technically be used with motorhomes as long as they are Class B. So that was a big overview of the different features and differences and similarities of these two bike racks. Is there a clear winner for the best bike rack with a ramp? I don't think so, because actually I got the Yakima OnRamp for my aunt and uncle for their RV to carry around my aunt's heavy electric bikes, while if I was using this on my personal vehicle, I would use the Destination E because I found it easier to load the bikes onto that ramp and onto that bike rack. So it really does depend on what situation you're in, what types of bikes do you have, and what vehicle you are putting these on. So if you want a bike rack that fits a larger variety of bikes, has a higher weight capacity, and a really cool way of tilting away, that's a Destination E. But if you're looking for a bike rack that can fit a larger variety of vehicles, is slightly lighter, plus if you're forgetful like me and want a ramp that is attached to the rack, that's the Yakima OnRamp. This right here was a comparison of bike racks with ramps. The Yakima OnRamp versus the Hollywood Rack's Destination E bike rack.